Hello and welcome to episode 19 of season 2 of Unlimited Opinions. I'm Adam Bishop.
I'm Mark Bishop.
And we are, of course, reading Jake Jackson's Myths and Legends, a book about world mythologies from around the world. This time we are starting on Indian mythology, starting with Hinduism and Tales of the Ramayana. He had a pretty lengthy introduction on this section, probably because most people aren't as familiar with Indian mythology as they are with the Roman and the Greek mythology, at least in terms of American readers and that sort of thing. What do you think of the introduction that he gave?
Well, it's very true of me. I didn't know anything about these things. I've read a couple books on the history of India, which is fascinating, both modern and ancient, I guess. But I didn't know anything about these myths, and I don't know much. I don't know much about history. No, I don't know much about Hinduism and the myths of that area. So it was neat.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciated the longer introduction, and it seems like he really likes Indian mythology.
Mm-hmm.
I got just the sense, reading between the lines, he really enjoyed them and enjoyed studying them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a pretty lengthy chapter just for this one book, but that is pretty, I guess, understandable considering that the source, the Ramayana, is over 50,000 lines long. It's a book of epic poetry. As it kind of says in the introduction, it's one of the two big texts in Hinduism, this being one of them, and then the Mahabharata being the other, which I think is the longest epic poem in the world, just total.
So have you read those yet?
I have not read the Mahabharata, no. I want to someday, but that is an undertaking.
What language is it in? Hindi?
It would be in Sanskrit.
Sanskrit.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the mother tongue, isn't it?
Yeah, basically. It's kind of like how, as far as I understand, it's kind of like how Latin is to Spanish. That's how Sanskrit is to Hindi, in a way. So,
I assume it had some influence on Latin as well.
mm-hmm. Yeah, they existed at the same time, really. So they were those are kind of the big, that along with Greek, Latin, and Sanskrit are kind of the big three Indo-European languages that have, a lot of descendants now. Well, not Greek so much. Greek just evolved into modern Greek, but those are kind of the big three Indo-European families, somewhat.
So at some point you got to learn Sanskrit.
I should. Unfortunately, there's no Sanskrit classes at Truman State University, as far as I know.
In Kirksville, Missouri, they don't have a couple Sanskrit experts up there?
I don't think so, unfortunately.
Is that a dead language?
That's a good question. I'm not entirely sure. I know it's somewhat of a holy language for a lot of Hindu people, but I don't know if it's actually a living language or if it's more like Latin. I think there might still be some speakers of Sanskrit. It'll be like a different Sanskrit than what was spoken like 2,000 years ago, but I think there are still some people who speak Sanskrit, but I could be wrong.
You should find those people.
I should. We should really get into the text that we're about to talk about here. Of course, the Tales of the Ramayana. And of course, we start with the birth of Rama.
Of course.
As you know from your extensive knowledge of the Ramayana.
Well, now I know something about it.
Yes, we both do. So long ago, King Dasharatha lived in the happy and prosperous city of Ayodhya, and he married his daughter Santa to the sage Risharinga, who became part of his inner circle along with the priests Vashishta and Devandaveva. Dasharatha longed for a son, and for years he made offerings to no avail, but he then made the supreme sacrifice of a horse, and Risharinga proclaimed he would have 4 sons, and Dasharatha's 3 wives were overjoyed. When any sacrifice is made, all the deities gather to take their portion of the sacrifice, but there is one dissenter among them, the evil Rakshasa Ravana, and a Rakshasa is a type of demon in Hindu religion or mythology, and Ravana could not be killed by any deity. The other deities then came to Brahma, who proclaimed Ravana must be killed by humans, and the other gods celebrated, realizing Ravana was not immortal, and the great god Vishnu appeared before them in yellow robes, carrying a mace, a discus, and a conch, and he was on the back of Garuda, the divine bird. The deities fell at Vishnu's feet, begging him to be born as Dasharatha's son to kill Ravana, and so he appeared to Dasharatha as a tiger, proclaiming himself to be an ambassador of God, and gave him spiritual food to give to his wives. And thus 4 sons were born, and named by Vashishta: Rama, born to Kaushalya, Bharata, born to Kaikeya, and Lakshman and Sutraguna, born to Sumitra. So those are the
That's easy for you to say.
It's not actually. I struggle greatly with these names, and I probably did not pronounce a single one of them correctly. But anybody is free to correct my pronunciation, so I can correct myself in future episodes.
I would not be able to correct you.
Yes, I figured as much. But this is an interesting sort of setup to the basically overarching plot of what we see of the Ramayana here. The great evil Ravana is killed, and then the only reason these 4 sons are born is because they're kind of incarnations of one of the big gods of Hinduism, that is Vishnu, with the express purpose of killing this great demon Ravana, which I think is a very interesting setup to this overall epic poem.
Right. Well, it has some similarities to, Jesus being the Son of God, and then he has to overcome sin, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought the same thing. It's very similar to, they're both the sons of Vishnu in a way. They're the sons of a mortal parent, while also being that, immortal deity themselves too, which I thought was very interesting. Sort of that connection between, Jesus and these 4 sons.
Right. I'm sure there's an explanation, but there's 3 wives and 4 sons. So I wonder why he didn't have a 4th wife. Why, the 2 of them, I think if I read it correctly, 2 of them were close, and I guess they were brothers from the same mother. And I thought it was kind of curious that, why would he have 4, and why would they have to be 4 from 3 women as opposed to 4 from 4 women, or 2 women have 2 kids or something?
Yeah. I'm not sure about that, but he does give, he splits the food into 4 portions, but 2 portions were given to Sumitra, who gave birth to Lakshman and Satrugna. So it's kind of an explanation within, the division of the food, I guess.
Right. I wonder why.
Yes.
Why didn't you give 5 to one of them or something?
I'm not sure.
I don't know.
So the next story is that of Rama and Vashishta. So Dasharatha's 4 sons grew into strong men, and they traveled in pairs. Satrugna was always with Bharata, and Lakshman was with Rama, who by the age of 16 was more accomplished than any other man on earth. At this time, a rishi named Vishvamitra had become a Brahma rishi, an excellent status, and he lived in Siddhashrama, where his daily prayers were interrupted by 2 evil Rakshasas, Maricha and Suvaha, who received their orders from Ravana. And so Vishvamitra begged Rama to rid him of the evil spirits. And so Rama and Lakshman traveled together to Siddhashrama in a cloud of radiance. And as the sacrifice began, Rana wounded Maricha and Suvaha, and they fled, leaving the hermitage free from Ravana. So this is kind of like the first story where we see some of Rama's power, where he goes out with Lakshman and basically very easily vanquishes these 2 terrible demons that are terrorizing this poor, sort of holy man who's just trying to live in his hermitage and offer up prayers. So it's this first sort of noble act of Rama that we see, and it's the first of very many that we'll see throughout the Ramayana.
Right. We'll get to it a little bit more as it goes through, but it's I think these differ from the other mythologies that we've been talking about and reading about, in the sense that there are some truly good people and characters in this that they don't seem to have any faults, or if they do, they're few and far between. And these guys just go over there, they help out this hermit and vanquish the evil spirits, and that's it. It's like I'm waiting for some bad catastrophe to befall them, after they become, their hubris or something. That'd be more Greek story than this one, but it was good story.
Yeah, we definitely see kind of throughout the Ramayana, basically you're supposed to try to emulate Rama, I believe, kind of in your daily life, along with his 3 brothers. There's certain just sort of quotes that are saying, act like this, and, these certain sort of passages of wisdom that we see throughout here that are kind of, I assume, supposed to be calling you to act in the fashion that Rama would, be this good person, essentially, help others. I think is kind of the message in this first story. He doesn't gain anything by any means by just helping this poor guy who's living by himself. It's just, this is what he should do. He has to go out and help this guy, basically.
Yeah, agreed.
And so the next story is that of Rama and the bow of Janaka. And so Rama begged Vishvanitra for more tasks. And so Vishvamitra, Rama, and Lakshman traveled to Mithila, which Janaka ruled, and he owned a splendid bow, which was presented to his ancestor Devarata by Shiva himself, and no one had been able to bend it to string the bow. Upon seeing this company, Janaka knew that they were godly, and so he told Rama of his daughter Sita, who came from the earth as he plowed his fields, and she would be married to whoever could bend the bow. The bow was then brought to Rama by 4,000 men, and Rama then bent it so far that it snapped, causing nearly everyone to collapse due to the loud sound, and Janaka then proclaimed that the wedding should be held immediately. And so it was that Rama and Sita married, and Lakshman married Urmila, the second daughter of Janaka, and Bharata and Satrughna married Mandavya and Sutakirta, daughters of Kushadkwaji, and the four brothers returned home to Ayodhya in glory. And so in this story, this is very much, this is kind of Rama revealed. He's in front of this great crowd of people in this massive city. He's, this massive feat of strength, this bow. They said it had to be pulled on a chariot by 4,000 men. So it was definitely a very big, or at least a very important bow. And so nobody else could do it. And he bends it so far that it completely snaps, whereas nobody had been able to even bend it slightly in the past. This is kind of his sort of revelation to the people. And then he weds Sita, who's a major player in the story from here on out.
I guess it didn't bother them that he broke the bow.
I guess not, but I don't know if it was really a usable bow, considering how big it must have been to be carried by 4,000 men.
True.
But I mean, I guess they were more impressed than anything, because nobody had been able to bend it, and he comes out and he breaks the entire thing. So I guess they were more in awe than angry at him for breaking the bow.
I have to be hunting a big elephant or something.
That's true. That's very true.
I also like how they had monkey protectors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we see monkeys again throughout the story. There's definitely connections with sort of the natural world, sort of protecting Rama and, working with him to further his tasks in the future.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. He's kind of almost this tie between sort of nature and other people at times. We'll see later on. I can talk about that more.
He's like Dr. Doolittle.
In a way he is, I guess. Exactly. So the next story is that of Kaikeyi and the heir apparent. So after many years, King Dasharatha decided that he must appoint an heir apparent, and Rama was the obvious choice. For he was beloved by all, and the king's advisors welcomed this decision, for Rama was mighty, loved the people, was self-controlled, and always brought victory. And so it was that all of Ayodhya welcomed and awaited this decision, except for one person, the deceitful old nurse Mantara, who began to sow the seeds of discontent in Kaikeyi, the mother of Bharata. Mantara then came to Kaikeyi several times, warning her that Rama would cast out Bharata. But Kaikeyi ignored these sentiments until Mantara said Rama's mother Kaushulya would seek revenge for an old slight, and at this Kaikeyi finally decided Rama must be cast out and Bharata installed as heir. Mantara reminded Kaikeyi that Dasharatha owed her 2 gifts for saving his life when he was near death on the battlefield. And so Kaikeyi sobbed until Dasharatha came to her, promising that whatever she wished would be hers. She then stated her wishes that Bharata be heir and Rama be forced to live as a hermit in the Dandaka forest for 14 years. And Dasharatha begged her to change her mind, but she would not, and so the king summoned Rama. Rama's smile faded as he saw his father's despair, and Kaikeyi explained her wishes, and Rama smiled with such sincerity that she was stung with shame. For he was sad only for his father, and was happy to follow his every command, only asking to comfort his mother and his wife Sita before he left. Kaushalya offered to join him in solitude, and Lakshman was eager to fight for Rama, but he told them to simply care for Dasharatha, only granting Sita's desire to follow her husband into the woods. So this is kind of the catalyst to the rest of this story, is, this is the big turning point where Rama's luck really goes sour. All brought about because of this one person who for some reason really just did not like him. That's Mantara, the old nurse, or maybe she seeked to gain something by helping propel Kaikeyi to power through her son Bharata. It's an interesting sort of tale of the sort of treachery here, I suppose.
Yeah, and I was surprised, of course it's the first time hearing the story, or reading the story, that he's just like, okay, Rama's, he gets ordered to spend 14 years as a, penniless hermit, and he's like, okay, you want me to, I'll pack up my stuff. Or, I won't pack up my stuff, I'll just go.
Yeah. It's definitely, I think, sort of one of the values here is definitely like kind of listening to authority, obeying your parents, I think is sort of something that's supposed to be followed here in the example of Rama. He's happy to do it because that's what he's been told to do, and he knows his father's a good man, and he must be telling him to do good things, and so he welcomes it happily, and he doesn't protest at all.
I don't know that I read that into it, that just because Dad says so, it must be the right thing. I read into it that you just kind of accept your lot in life and you just deal with it. Because he didn't like that his dad was obviously sad and pained at him having to leave town, become a hermit. But he understood that his dad had made a promise that he was going to grant this wish to his favorite wife at the time, and the bill came due, and Rama's going to have to go out and be a hermit. I mean, it was a sense of duty and honor, and just kind of peaceful acceptance
Hmm.
of what he's got to do. And I thought was the most impressive thing.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of just the idea of, this is the way that things are. I can't change them, so might as well do what is told.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you again.
Oh, okay.
He could change it. He could have
That's
said no, and the whole country would have supported him in it.
hmm
He was loved by everyone, and they were celebrating that he would be the next king in anticipation. And his dad said he's going to be king, and then this crazy nurse gets the spouse to call in the favor to her husband, and he says, "Yeah, I gotta order him out." And Rama could have just said, "No, I'm going to stay here," and his dad would have been, I think, happy in a way because he wouldn't have to send his son out and say, if this was Greek, uh, he would have tracked down that witch and beheaded her, and then bad things would happen or whatever. But I think it could have been different. He just chose to accept it. Don't you think?
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I mean, yeah, he's like said to be the most powerful person in the world at this time. At the age of 16, he was more accomplished than anybody, and this is several years after. So it does make sense that, yeah, he could change this, in any way that he sees fit, but he just accepts it.
Right. Now, there's a certain amount of strength in that I think is underappreciated in Western
hmm
philosophy, of kind of accepting, what accepting the results of whatever's before you and smiling and moving on.
Kind of reminds me of Stoicism, if you remember our conversations about that a long time ago. You can't decide what happens to you, but you can decide how you react to it, basically.
Yes.
hmm
Agreed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I also think, kind of interestingly, sort of shifting topic here, but the character of Kaikeyi is almost sort of an example of that sort of archetype that we see in a lot of folklore, that sort of evil stepmother in a way, seeking for her own benefit. This is, of course, started by Mantara, who kind of also embodies that sentiment, but it's kind of interesting to see that sort of archetype produced here in this story with this, evil stepmother, evil nurse kind of propelling this whole series of events into action.
Right. Starting with the corruption of her heart, and then things go bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
I did like that she resisted it for a while.
Mm-hmm. And it was really, she resisted everything about it. I think you're made to assume that Mantara was promising her, well, if Bharata was there, you get riches and you get power. The only time that she relents is because she said that Rama's mother would seek revenge on her for some slight in the past, and that's when she agrees, because she's, I guess, almost sees herself in danger because of what might happen.
Or more importantly, her son's in danger.
True. So the next story is that of Rama's exile. So Lakshman could not bear to leave his brother, so he gave up his wealth to join Rama and Sita, and there was hysteria, for all wanted Rama as king. A noble Brahmin named Sumantra threw himself in the mercy of Kaikeyi to allow Rama to stay, but her heart had turned to stone as Dasharatha was numbed with grief. The king motioned to send all his wealth with Rama, but Kaikeyi insisted he remain a beggar, and Sita wept, fearing for the future and loath to give up her easiness of life. The subjects of Dasharatha begged him to let her take the throne, for if they could not have Rama, they would at least have her, but Kaikeyi rejected this too. Dasharatha then stood firm, sending Sita with all of her jewels and all of her clothes. And so she went out, and so she shone like the sun as the three went out into the forest, and Dasharatha cast Kaikeyi from his bed in his home, only finding peace with Kaushalya, the mother of Rama. Lakshman, Rama, and Sita came to the blessed river Ganga, where Guha, king of Nishada, greeted them and made them comfortable, and Rama and Lakshman swore to protect one another and Sita, and they swore to never leave one another. The next day they came to the hermitage of Bharadwaja, who told them of a wonderful place on the mountain of Chitrahuta, where they could live, and so they came to the place, building a house of wood and sacrificing a deer, settling in for their new lives. So what I think, sort of the first thing of interest here, I mean, there's a lot of interesting facets to this short little story, but all of the people clamoring to have Sita as queen. If they can't have Rama, she's the closest thing to Rama, being his wife, and they would welcome her to the throne. If they can't ever have Rama, at least put Sita in. I thought that was very, very interesting, especially considering this story was written. I forget the exact date that he gives, but it was well over 2,000 years ago. The Ramayana, just sort of this, I guess putting Sita on this sort of pedestal. Welcoming her as a great hero and a worthy leader potentially.
Yeah, especially since he has three brothers.
Mm-hmm.
The expectation would be that, that this devoted brother of his would stay there and be king, and not the Bharata guy who's the usurper.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I thought that was very interesting. It's also good to see Dasharatha stand up, I guess, a little bit. He's not standing up to Kaikeyi completely, but he is at least giving Sita some comfort. He is providing something for his son and then his son's wife as they go out into the forest. But it is interesting that this is kind of what he provides for her, is just her clothes and her jewels and that sort of thing. Some of her riches to go with her.
Right.
But I do think that is sort of a thing that we see in this mythology, sort of in Hinduism. There's a lot of descriptions of the clothes that people wear, I've noticed. And I think that's kind of a thing of importance in these stories.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know.
You don't know? You don't have any theories?
I'm trying to make one up.
Go for it. I'd like to see this.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. It's an interesting sort of, I guess it's almost a display of wealth or of purity, maybe. If you have very nice clothes, we first see it, with the head god coming in yellow robes and that sort of thing. So this sort of description of the importance of clothes is very fascinating. I'll have to look into that.
I mean, I'm just guessing, but it's probably similar to the vestments in Catholic Church. They have certain colors, have certain meanings, and so it'd be important to you if you had these certain vestments with you that bring you solace and comfort and all that kind of stuff.
True. Very true. So the next story is that of Bharata being king. So Dasharatha soon died of his grief in Kaushalya's arms, remembering that he had been prophesied to meet his death, grieving for his son. And so all of Ayodhya mourned, and a drought befell the land. An envoy was sent to Bharata, telling him that he must return at once, but not telling him the fate of his father and brother. So after 7 days, Bharata returned, finding the palace empty, and Kaikeyi stated that Dasharatha was dead, as she glowed with pride. Weeping silently, Bharata then asked for Rama, and Kaikeyi explained what she had done, and Bharata renounced her as a murderer, taking a few days to mourn, and then setting out at once to find Rama. Coming to Rama, Bharata begged him to return, but Rama refused, giving Bharata his sandals, saying that he would return in 14 years, upon which his sandals and his kingship would be returned. So we get another sort of depiction of the evilness of Kaikeyi here, as she's just glowing with pride as she's talking about how her husband has died and how she is single-handedly responsible for kicking out the next king. It's really kind of a despicable description as she's standing there smiling as her own son is grieving the death of his father.
Yeah, and I'm kind of surprised he didn't lop off her head. But but just said she's a murderer, and then he goes and tracks down his brother and says, you can. Are we there? Is this part of the story? Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And says, I don't want to be king. You'd be a much better king. Take it back. And then Rama says, no. I've been ordered by Dad to be a hermit for 14 years, so I'll see him in 14 years. And then Bharata's like, well, wait a second. If I inherited the kingdom, I can give it to you, because I inherited, it's mine to give. And Rama says, that's not how it works. I've been instructed by our father to spend 14 years as a hermit. So look me up in 14 years and maybe I'll take over. It's amazing. The story's amazing in both parts, that the sense of duty and acceptance of the mission for Rama. And then for Bharata, immediately, instead of doing it, well, first he does the funeral rites for his dad, then he immediately tracks down Rama and says, hey, you're king, I'm not king, I don't care what anybody says, and tries to talk him into it. And that's highly unusual and in actual human history, and unusual for mythology.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of a parallel story where somebody's given everything in the world, literally, and says, no, it's unjust and there's a better person to serve than me. That was a neat story, and it says a lot about their culture, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's, to bring it back to, Greek mythology, if this was a Greek story, Bharata would have definitely, usurped the throne and taken the power. This would have kind of been the catalyst for another aspect of the story. Now Rama's got to go back and kill his own brother for taking the power. And I think it is very interesting that he's, a wholly good person saying, I don't want this power. This is not for me. I want to give it to you. You would be a better ruler. So it's definitely almost like well, I mean, they are literally sort of the embodiment of the head god, but I was going to say sort of a saintly figure here, giving up all of the riches of the world for somebody who knows that he would rule it better, essentially.
Right.
Very fascinating.
Yeah, I like it.
So the next story is that of the golden deer. So for 10 years, Rama, Sita, and Lakshman wandered through the Dandaka forest, befriending the vulture Jaitayu, finally setting at Panchavati by the river Godavari, living there peacefully until they were attacked by the evil Rakshasa Surpanaka, the sister of Ravana. Lakshman chased her away, cutting off her ears and nose, and her enraged brother Kara sent 14,000 Rakshasas to kill them. But Rama slew them all, finally killing Kara with a fiery arrow. Ravana then wanted revenge, seeking the advice of his accomplice Maricha, who warned Ravana that Rama could destroy his city Lanka very, very easily. Ravana didn't listen, forcing Maricha to take the form of a golden deer in the Dhanadaka forest. And Sita begged Rama to catch the deer, and so he set out, leaving Lakshman with Sita. Rama shot the deer, but as it died, it called out for Sita and Lakshman in Rama's voice, and Rama ran back, realizing the ruse. But Sita had already sent Lakshman out for Rama, and she was now alone.
Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah, so it's a little bit of a cliffhanger here for the next section, but this is kind of another sort of turning point. For 10 years they live very peacefully, and they fight this evil sister of Ravana, and they somehow kill 14,000 other demons all at once, which is very impressive. But sort of this ruse is very... I'm trying to think... I feel like this has been popping up in other mythologies. I don't know if we've covered them, but I feel like this is something that we have seen, calling out in somebody else's voice to lead them away. Is kind of a recurring theme, at least in a whole bunch of stories. I can't think of a specific example, but it is an interesting ruse, seeing this golden deer. I must have it, so go out and hunt for it. And then it calls out in Rama's voice, and so Sita is left alone, which is the turning point for the next part.
Well, there's in the Hunger Games, they have those mockingjays.
Oh, maybe that's what I was thinking of.
No, I'm thinking of another one. There's a whole bunch.
Yeah, I know there's a specific story where there's something that calls out in somebody else's voice. I can't think of it.
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank too now you mentioned it.
Yeah, unfortunate.
They were doing so well for a while, then this is really where it turned south.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was thinking, this guy was basically born to kill this evil spirit dude, but he doesn't do any of that stuff for many, many years, really. He's living as a hermit here for 10 years before this even happens. Mm-hmm. So you can see, well, at some point, he's going to have to get a reason to kill this guy.
Yeah.
And we're edging toward that point.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you bring that up because it's not explained here. It might be explained in the actual text of the Ramayana, or of course only reading a summary. But it's like, do they know that they are the embodiment of the head god Vishnu? Or do they just, do they think that they are just very powerful people? It's kind of interesting, are they really, well, I mean, I guess they are embodiments of Vishnu, but are they, really the personality of Vishnu, I guess I'm trying to say, Vishnu.
Yeah, I guess they don't know their intended mission. They're just going about life.
True. Possibly. Yes. So the next story is that of Rama and Sita. And so alone in Panchavati, Rama was approached by a wandering yogi, and she was relieved that she was not alone. But then she was startled when he proclaimed that he was Ravana, and he demanded that she renounce Rama and become his wife. Sita was enraged, rebuking him, and so Ravana grabbed her, which caught the attention of the vulture Jatayu, who warned him of Rama's wrath, and a battle ensued, and Jatayu was left near death. Upon returning, Jatayu told Rama and Lakshman what happened, and they began a search, making an alliance with Sugriva, a deposed king, and Hanuman, chief of the monkeys, who all searched for Sita, but no word was heard of her for 4 months. Rama gave his ring to Hanuman to give as a sign to Sita if he ever found her, and as all hope seemed to be lost, Sampati, brother of Jatayu, came to them, revealing Ravana's location in Lanka. Hanuman was chosen to see if Sita was in Lanka, and coming to the city, he found her not with Ravana's wives, but alone and dressed in rags, still rebuking Ravana. Hanuman came to her, and she was at first suspicious, but as he praised Rama and gave her his ring, she was convinced. Giving him some of her jewels to show Rama as proof that he had found her, the monkey rejoiced, attracting the rage of Ravana, who caught him. Ravana then set Hanuman's tail on fire in order to burn him to death, but Sita prayed in Rama's name that the fire should not harm him, and so Hanuman leaped across Lanka, his flaming tail burning much of the city to the ground. Returning, Rama was overjoyed by the monkey's news, and Sugriva ordered that the monkey host lay siege to Lanka, and it was there that Rama made the plan to free Sita. So another interesting thing that I actually wanted to mention in regards to the last story, but if you remember when they first set out into their hermitage, Rama and Lakshman swore that they would always be there for each other. They would always protect each other, and where things start to go south is where they're finally separated. I think that's sort of importance in that they unintentionally sort of broke their vow, and that's where everything goes south for them, leading to Sita being taken into this evil city of Lanka.
Well, it's also, going back to the last story, it was really Sita's greed in wanting him to capture this beautiful deer, and Lakshana was suspicious of it because it was so pretty and didn't like the idea. But Rama went, "Oh, you want the deer? I'll go catch it." And that's where it really went south, I think.
True.
And then that's how they end up getting separated, because Lakshana was sent by Sita to go find his brother, and then left her alone, and here we are.
True.
With an army of monkeys laying siege upon a city.
Yes.
That's pretty awesome. When I was reading this, I was thinking there's got to be like some of those what do you call them, Bollywood movies. It probably tells a story. I'm gonna have to.
I'm sure there's many of them. I've always wanted to watch some of those Bollywood movies. They look amazing. But I've never really sat down and watched one, unfortunately.
Yeah, I've just seen scenes of them, like battle scenes and stuff. They're a lot of them are over the top. It's pretty cool.
Yes, very cool.
They're big budget films. I mean, it's a big market.
It's a huge industry in India with their movies. They're very, very prolific money making industry, really. I do also think it's interesting to note how Sita, completely still rebukes Ravana. She's in the heart of this evil city. By all regards, hope should be completely lost, but she's not with his wives at all. She's sitting on the steps of his palace outside in rags, and he's constantly trying to trick her into marrying him, and she constantly rebukes him, which is just great on her part, very much so.
It in a way reminds me of Gandalf, in Saruman's tower. He's stuck up there, or in the Hobbit. We just watched the Hobbit without you, by the way.
That's very infuriating.
All 3 movies, extended versions. And but Gandalf was in that cage, and Dol Guldur.
Okay.
Dol.
Dol. It's 2 words. Dol Guldur.
Guldur.
Close enough.
But he never gave up hope.
True.
And then he was whispers in a moth or something.
Yes.
And then the eagles come miraculously at the end.
Okay.
I was free to make whatever comments I wanted during the movie because you were not there.
That's frustrating. That's very frustrating.
That's good. Anyway, that's what I was thinking of. It's like Gandalf being stuck in a tower.
True. So the next story is that of Rama's bridge. Vibhashana, brother of Ravana, begged his brother to see reason, as they stood no chance against Rama, but Ravana dismissed him and left the city, first saying that the Fae refuse advice, as a man on the brink of death refuses medicine. And so Vibhashana then came to Rama, proclaiming himself an ally. Now a great ocean lay between Rama's camp and the city of Lanka, and Rama lay down, begging the waters to open before him. And finally the ocean rose up and spoke to him, saying that he could only cross by a bridge. So Rama dried up the waters of the north, which flowered and bloomed, and the ocean gave Rama the monkey Nala. So the monkeys set to work building a mighty bridge across the ocean to begin the siege of Lanka. So the siege of Lanka is very briefly summarized here, and I'm going to read straight from Jake Jackson's book. The siege of Lanka was a story which took many years to resolve, and it involved the near deaths of Rama and each of his men. Garuda himself came down to heal their wounds, and the men fought on until finally Ravana was slain by Rama, with the Brahma weapon given to him by Agastya. Only this weapon had the force to take the life of the evil spirit, and the wind lay on the wings of this weapon, the sun and fire in its head, and in its mass the weight of Meru and Mandara. Rama held a mighty bow, and the arrow was sent forth, where it met its mark on the breast of Ravana. The lord of the Rakshasas was slain, and all of the gods poured bouquets of blossoms, rainbows of happiness upon Rama and his men. Rama's greatest achievement, the reason for Vishnu ever having taken human form, had been accomplished. Rama ordered Sita to be brought to him at once. And so we see, the names of various gods popping up here, and of course this is very briefly summarized, but it really reminds me of the Iliad here, kind of, laying siege to the city, and at least in the telling that we have, we don't get the full picture. We kind of start our story at the very end of the battle. We kind of skip the beginning of the battle, which is how the actual Iliad starts. It starts in the 10th year of the battle. So at least in this retelling, in this summary, it very much reminded me of the Iliad, kind of summarizing what had come before and then popping us into the story at the very end of the battle, which is interesting.
Right. With the godly all-stars and the super weapon and all these different things in it,
Mm-hmm. True.
What is it? What was it? The Power Rangers. Remind me of the Power Rangers. Where they all aren't they the ones that they get together and they become like a super? No, maybe I'm thinking of something else. Is that where they get together and they become like a super robot dude?
Yeah. You're thinking of Power Rangers.
Okay, good. Yeah, because that's what I was thinking about when they had this, the sword of this and it has the hammer of that and the weight of such and such.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like we compared, the Iliad to the ancient Greek Avengers. This is kind of sort of the same thing. You're seeing all of these big names of Hinduism come together to defeat this evil in the city of Lanka, which I think is a very, very repetitive, I don't mean to say repetitive, but very reoccurring sort of theme in a lot of mythologies and a lot of just stories, this final climax where you see all of these big names come together to defeat this terrible evil. It's the same thing, again, in Lord of the Rings, to call it back there. You have all of Gondor and all of Rohan coming together to defeat the evil of Sauron. So it's definitely a very pervasive element in a lot of human storytelling is what can we do if we all come together to defeat this great evil, is sort of what I see in this.
Yes.
Thank you for that wonderful, insightful comment. I appreciate it. And so the next story is that of Sita's second trial. So Rama knew that Sita would not be welcomed back, as she had lived in another man's house, and so he said that he must renounce her, for she had been in contact with the greatest of evils. She wept, saying that she was the daughter of Janaka, but also of the earth itself, and he didn't know her true self, then demanding that a funeral pyre be lit, as she no longer wished to live if she could not be with Rama. The gods then begged Rama to relent, and Brahma then came forward, saying, Sita is Lakshmi, and you are Vishnu and Krishna. No stain has touched Sita, and although she was tempted in every way, she did not even consider Ravana in her innermost heart. She is spotless. The fire roared up in approval, and added, Take her back. And so Sita was returned, and Rama pledged his undying love, explaining that the test was for her own safety, and it had now been 14 years since they were exiled. And so they returned to Ayodhya, and the kingdom was restored, and Rama reigned happily for 10,000 years. And the day finally came when Sita conceived a child, and she wished to visit the Ganges, and arrangements were made for Lakshman to lead her there. However, Rama was still concerned about public opinion, and he called his greatest advisors, and his first officer proclaimed that the people were angry that he had welcomed back Sita from Lanka, and in fear of disgrace, Rama ordered Lakshman to leave Sita by the river Ganges. When Sita and Lakshman arrived, Rama's wish was explained, and Sita was afraid of surviving in solitude, but she would do it because Rama had decreed it so. So this is kind of, I'm not a huge fan of Rama for doing this. This seems kind of backhanded, I guess. She's just been proved pure by all of the gods. The fire itself spoke to him, telling him to take her back. But at the end of the day, he's so afraid of the court of public opinion that he casts her out again. And it's sort of a repeat of what exactly happened to him with his father. He feels, compelled to kick this person out. And of course, Rama in the first part, but now it's Sita, and they both say, well, I can't really fight against this. This is the way that things are. Here I am. I'm going to remain exiled in a way. You look puzzled.
Well, I disagree again.
You disagree?
I think they're completely different scenarios from the ruler's perspective. His father was obligated by a vow he took. That he'd grant her, I think it was 2 wishes, but we only were told of one.
Well, I think the 2 wishes were exile and make Bharata king. So one was exile, one was proclaiming Bharata king.
Fair enough. And so he was obligated to do that. And Rama at this point it's obviously true that she is pure. She's been stolen because he abandoned her. So he grabbed this deer thing, and she suffered tremendously. He fights a great war to get her back, and then he's going to ask, "Hey, everybody, what do you guys think? How's everything going on?" They're like, "Well, we think your wife's a whore." I mean, and he says, maybe you're right. Even though everybody and the gods say that she's not, and this poor lady's just a victim, he says you got to go out to the woods again.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy.
Yeah.
But to her credit, she's like, "Well, if you say so, I got to do what I got to do." And I'll prove my innocence. I mean, I'm shocked by that, because he started out as such a pure good character, and this is really not good at all.
Yeah, not at all. I think it's really, I guess where I was seeing the similarities in, Rama's initial reaction when he was exiled is kind of the same as Sita's reaction is now, saying, well, I guess, this is the way things are. She doesn't protest, just like he did not protest.
Right, I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
This also kind of reminds me, going way back to season 1, about, I think, some remarks you made in regards to, like, just complete unfettered democracy, in which, the court of, public opinion will kick out the best people at the end of the day.
At the end of the day, the beginning of the day, the middle of the day, and then they'll change their mind. It's a true story where they had, they sent messengers. They sent messengers that a couple generals were to be executed because of their performance in the battlefield. And they changed their mind the next morning, and they had to send a different mission, by a boat, as fast as they could to reverse the decision and try to catch the first one, which was to kill him. And then the second was to say, no, don't kill him, because they're so fickle. We're so fickle. I don't want to say they, because it's us. The people do that when it's in a democracy, and for him to fall for this, well, we think maybe she's a whore.
Mm-hmm.
Well, come on, man. 10,000 years ago when I started my reign, you thought I was, the knees bees, and she was great. And when I was ordered out, you wanted her as queen, and now you're saying she's dirty.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he should have said.
Yeah.
He said, "Screw you, I'm king."
Well, it's interesting to consider, what do you think, like, the actual message is here? Because, clearly we're supposed to try to emulate Rama at every other point in time. So is this either, a warning tale about sort of the dangers of sort of the court of public opinion, or is it telling us that we should listen to the court of public opinion because we're supposed to be like Rama? I don't know if that's entirely clear here. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think the first thing you said is, I think it's a cautionary tale, and I think this story is really to emulate Sita in her stoic acceptance of her fate. She's gonna have to struggle through it, and I see it more than that. I mean, other than that, I don't like it. Yeah. I don't think you should be like him, doubting your loyal wife.
Mm-hmm.
You're supposed to stick by that person.
Yeah, true, very true. So the last story in our summary of the tales of the Ramayana is that of the sons of Rama. So the world was changing, and Rama was advised that the age of Kali had begun, and Rama longed for Sita, longing for the day that she would be declared cleansed of all unrighteousness. One day Rama prepared a horse sacrifice, inviting the hermit Valmiki to the ceremony, and Valmiki brought with him 2 boys, Kusha and Lava, the twin sons born of Sita, who was safe living with the hermit. Sita was then sent for, and Valmiki asked Rama to permit her to give testimony of her purity. And so Sita said quietly, I'm reading right from the text here, I have never loved nor thought of anyone but Rama, even in my innermost heart. That is true. May the goddess of the earth be my protection. I pray now for Vasundhara to receive me. And the earth then thrust under the lovely Sita a throne so beautiful that each in the assembly gasped with pleasure. But the earth curled that throne around Sita and drew her back again into itself, home once again and part of the beginning and end of all things. Rama screamed in despair, his heart no longer in his country. Lakshman became a hermit, eventually returning to Indra as part of Vishnu, and Bharata no longer wanted the kingdom, and it was decreed that Kusha and Lava rule Ayodhya as 2 separate cities. Rama joined with his brothers, and with the blessings of his people, he returned to heaven as Vishnu with his brothers. And Brahma appointed places in the heavens for all who had come after Rama, and it was decreed that the Ramayana be told far and wide, and so it still is today. And so there's an interesting sort of aspect here, sort of this new age that they're entering in, this age of Kali. And if I remember correctly, I haven't studied this too much, but this is a topic covered in a book that I read, Joseph Campbell's Hero with a Thousand Faces. And sort of in Hinduism, there's this idea of sort of these repeating cycles. Everything kind of comes back to the beginning. There's an age of, great heroes, and over time the heroes kind of degrade into ordinary humans, and then they sort of become back into gods, and the cycle starts all over again, if I'm remembering correctly. And so I think this is part of that big sort of cycle aspect of things. We see that, it's explicitly stated they're entering into this new age, but also we see that definitely with Sita. If you remember her origin story, she wasn't, born of a human mother. She was just emerged from the ground as he was plowing his fields. Her father was plowing his fields, and she was just appeared there, and now she's returning to the earth in the same fashion which she came.
And help explain why Rama is no longer such an idealistic, great person and doubting his devoted wife.
Mm-hmm. True. I don't know 100% for certainty if that is what is being told here, but I do think it's definitely a possibility, knowing sort of that cycle structure, with him sort of degrading into a lesser man than he was.
Right.
It's interesting, very interesting, and it sort of is kind of bringing things almost into a more historical aspect. No longer these godly men ruling a city. It's just these two sons, and the city had to be split up. It's almost sort of bringing it into actual history, sort of that movement from myth into legend, almost into history.
Right. Well said.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. So what were your thoughts on the tales of the Ramayana overall? What is the overall takeaway, I guess, from this story?
I really enjoyed the stories because they're different than what I consider like more traditional myths, and I liked how idealistic a lot of the main characters were, and how there's a message of duty and honor initially, and throughout the whole thing, depending on which characters you're talking about. I mean, Sita had duty and honor and purity through the entire experience, through all these stories. So I thought they were great, and but still had interesting stories and conflicts and things to be aware of, and not to let yourself get what do you call it, like seduced by jealousy or fear, and to turn on somebody else or manipulate other people. It was I really enjoyed them.
Yeah, I definitely think corruption is one of the big themes overall. We see that first with Bharata's mother, wanting this power and wanting, I guess, her son to be safe in a way, but after a while it was just about the power. We see it again with Sita and Ravana, again rebuking him. And I think that's a very interesting aspect. In the introduction, Jake Jackson kind of explains, there's not really a hard-cut line between gods and humans in these Indian myths. Really the biggest difference is sort of the power that they have. Gods are fundamentally different in the power that they have, but they can still be wholly corrupted. They're not perfect beings. They're not, sort of how, the Christian view of God is, and that God is sort of infallible. These gods, these deities are, subject to the same things that us humans are subject to, sort of similar to the Greek myths in a way, that the gods all have their own agendas and their own plans and everything. But in here, it's almost like, the gods can be terribly evil at some points.
Yeah.
I'd also be very interested to look into sort of the, I forget the exact word for it, but sort of the ordering of like beings in this mythology, where the demons are in relation to the actual gods and that sort of thing. I wonder if we'll get more of that in the future, but I'm not sure. We'll have to find out. Next episode, we are covering the beginning of the Mahabharata with some of the tales of Krishna. So.
I get the idea that it's like a bottomless pit of stuff that you could study. It just seems so deep, and there's so many things that you could study about India and Hindu and the myths and the stories. It just seems, I don't mean that in a bad way, in the bottomless pit. I wasn't saying it was like cesspool. I was just saying that there's got to be so much material there to study because they have such an ancient culture and very creative. I mean, just really neat stuff.
Well, I mean, like I said, the Mahabharata is the longest epic ever. It's one of the longest works, just total, really. Just the amount of lines and the amount of words it has. I've never read it. I want to read it someday, but like I said, that's a massive undertaking. Studying this sort of thing is a massive undertaking. It's a very in-depth, very multifaceted mythology as far as I've seen. It's fascinating.
So he would be, or whoever that person or people were that wrote that, or is the first author in desperate need of an editor.
True.
Man, this thing goes on forever. Why don't you put it in a new paragraph, man? It's been 5 million pages.
Oh, this thing goes on forever. That gives me an idea. Everything is in cycles. It always goes on forever.
Good stuff.
Yes. All right. Well, this has been Season 2, Episode 19 of Unlimited Opinions. I've been Adam Bishop.
I'm still Mark Bishop.
It was very interesting stuff, really. I mean, I'm excited to see what happens next. Again, next episode is Legends of Krishna, starting with the Mahabharata.
Have you ever seen the movie Airplane?
I've seen parts of it.
Oh, well, before the next episode, we'll have to watch the scenes where the Hare Krishnas are in the airport. But I mean, they're like a particular sect of Hindu people, like in the 70s. And this was back in the day before they had security at the airport. So anybody can go in there, and you had a lot of like panhandlers or Baptist ministers trying to convert people because they have layovers and they're like a captive audience. And the Hare Krishnas were always in these like robes with tambourines and asking for alms or whatever the heck they called them. And so there's a great scene in there where there's Hare Krishnas asking what this like tough pilot who's going to save the day going in the airport, asking him for something. He like beats him up, and throws around. It's really funny.
Yes. Well,
so yeah, I'll watch that before we learn about Krishna.
I lied. The next episode will actually be on the breakdown of that scene from Airplane. That's actually what we're covering. Yes.
Oh, that's nice.